Hello, lovely viewers. It's time for another story here. Sorry what? You know the drill, go and grab your favorite mug and settle in because for today's story, we have a shameless woman whose miscalculation spelled her eventual downfall. Let's begin. Our son Jonathan went off to school 8 months ago, leaving Murray and I to become empty nesters at the age of 45. We were proud of our son and his scholarship to Oxford University. As empty nesters, we needed to re-establish our relationship and start a new life without children. I assumed our sex life would immediately be enhanced, and we would get back into our old sexual activity, which used to be frequent and fun. But for the first 2 months, Marie was a little depressed about her baby boy off on his own. In addition, I think she realized that she was about to turn 46 years old, with some new face wrinkles, and several extra pounds. To me, they enhanced her beauty, but I think she felt as if life was passing her by, and that her years of fun and excitement were behind her. After doing some research, I learned that this was quite normal. I tried to give her positive feedback, lots of compliments, and time to get used to our new family dynamic. It took a few months, but she came home from work on Friday night all happy and excited, like my wife of 20 years ago. Full of smiles, she was like a new woman, and we spent the weekend in bed catching up for all the years we spent taking care of responsibilities that we no longer had. To my amazement, she did things that she had never done before. We spent most of the weekend in bed, our sex life surpassing heights we had never reached before. The next morning, I awoke with Murray spooned into me, smiled and said, "Good morning sexy, that was an amazing night. Whatever got into you? Whatever it was, I definitely wanted to continue. I love you baby," is all she said before she stroked my clock hard, and once again we made love before we went down for breakfast. For the first time in years, I felt as if our sex life was back on track, and we would be starting the next phase of our lives. What I didn't know, and learned later, was that it wasn't me, but a man from her work that ignited her sex drive to these levels. Over the last 6 weeks he took an interest in Marie. His compliments and flirting brought back some of her youth and confidence. It clearly helped us in bed, but created unwanted issues over the following months. 3 months later. Our life was going well, financially we were secure with jobs we enjoyed, Jonathan was getting along well at school, and for the last 3 months, our sex life continued to be great, and we seemed closer than ever. I still didn't know what ignited her enhanced sexual passion, but enjoyed every minute. Daily blue jabs, great sex every night, and I loved eating her shaved kitty. It was pure heaven and I was happy that she felt the same way, and that I was meeting all of her needs. I felt like a stud, being able to perform at this new enhanced level of sex. Friday nights had been our traditional date nights. Every Friday night after work, we would go to an early movie and dinner, rush home and make love until we fell asleep in each other's arms. We did this religiously to maintain a life outside the home. We both enjoyed our date nights, and tried to regain some of our younger years, and relive our youth. For our age group, we were having sex more often than our friends, and I tried to keep the excitement alive. This particular Friday night, she asked if we could go for a drink after dinner. She squeezed my leg a little flirtatiously as she gave me that "I'll make it worth your while" gaze with a wicked smile. She wanted to go to a new club she heard about from the girls at work called The Hideaway, which was only a 10-minute drive. It was a fun club with live jazz music. We had a couple of drinks at the bar, and Marie was even more loving and amorous than usual. I enjoyed her energy and couldn't wait to take her to bed. She definitely had me in a state, and that's when I felt her hand rubbing my hard cock through my pants. She smiled and kissed me tenderly on the lips as she continued to stroke me close to no, but stopped and continued to tease me by nibbling on my earlobe and whispering naughty things into my ear. I wanted to take her right there at the bar, but that's when the band stopped playing, which caused us to stop our public sexual indulgence. The band was taking a break as I finished off my third martini, and that's when a man I didn't recognize approached us, and in a loud baritone voice yelled out, "Marie, is it you? You look amazing tonight." I must have had a shocked look on my face as I saw my wife's expression turn from a smile to a look of concern, and quickly introduced us. "Hello Brandon, how nice to see you." "Brandon, this is my husband Charlie," she said while he gave her a hug. I felt a wave of jealousy come over me as my intuition told me something was wrong. Even in my state of intoxication I could see the coincidences adding up. Happy moods around the house, a new bar, a wife acting more loving than ever, and a chance meeting with a man at the exact bar she wanted us to go to. I had no proof or reason to suspect anything inappropriate, but I was now on guard. Brandon looked like he was in his early 40s, good-looking with a voice like Barry White, and I could only imagine how many undergarments got wet listening to that sexy voice. He was amiable and a good conversationalist, and after another drink I started to relax and consider that perhaps his arrival was just a coincidence. After sitting with us for 20 minutes, the jazz band started playing again. Things seemed fine until he asked me if it would be okay if he took my wife out for a dance. She stood up and said, "Of course he doesn't mind, do you honey?" as she led him out to the dance floor, leaving me there before I could answer. I was pissed, realizing that this was a setup, and after 3 slow dances, I almost left her there and drove home, but I decided to stay and see how this played out. As I watched, little things irritated me, like how Brandon held my wife a little too close. It bothered me how she rested her head on his shoulder with her arms around his neck. It bothered me how he whispered in her ear. The alarm bells in my head went off, and I realized my intuition was correct and that there was trouble afoot. They came back and acted like nothing was wrong, and Brandon started up a new conversation, as if slow dancing with my wife was quite common. Brandon was very complimentary of my wife and how much she helped him at work. When he asked me of my hobbies and things I like to do, Marie spoke up for me and answered him too quickly, as if it was planned. "Oh, Charlie loves to watch football, and is the biggest Manchester fan. He never misses a game on the telly." "Charlie, is that right? You know there's a playoff game tomorrow, are you planning on watching it?" "Yes, my friend Jake and I never miss a game, and we'll be at the pub enjoying their win over Liverpool." "Well, Charlie old boy, today is your lucky day. You see, I have 2 tickets to the game that I was just given by one of my suppliers, and since I'm not a football fan, I was going to give them away." He took out an envelope and showed me the 2 tickets that read Tier 1 center field. These were amazing seats, and impossible to get, but there they were. I immediately recognized the situation for what it was. He was like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, handing Eve the apple and telling her to take a bite. I responded coyly, "Wow, those are great tickets. You should go and enjoy the game." "Not my cup of tea, old chap. Look, I'm not going to use them, so I would like you to have them and enjoy the game. I mean, since you're Marie's husband, I would be honored for you to have them." There it was. My anger grew red hot. I knew exactly what was happening but took the tickets. And if he called me old chap or old man one more time, I was going to rip his throat out. Calmly I said, "Thanks Brandon, that's magnanimous of you. I'm sure Marie and I will enjoy the game." I knew exactly what to expect when I heard my wonderful wife speak up. "Oh no darling, I hate going to those games. You should go with Jake, I mean both of you would enjoy being there more than I would. Don't worry about me, I have lots to do. So, it's settled, you'll go with Jake tomorrow." At this point, I wasn't sure how far their relationship had gone. I wasn't sure if she had already been with him or if she was about to open our marriage, but it was obvious that she wanted him, and I was being relegated to the bench. Clearly, she misunderstood my resolve and cunning as I decided to watch this progress. I had no proof other than my intuition, what I saw on the dance floor, and the obvious setup at the bar tonight, so I would let this play out and see where things lead as I made plans along the way. There was no way I was going to share my wife, no matter how many playoff tickets or amount of money came my way. If she wanted someone else to play with, then she was free to do so, but I would not be part of the game, and her fate would be sealed. I saw Brandon for what he was. Brandon was a sophisticated man, good-looking with a seductive voice. Yes, he appeared fun-loving, intelligent, successful, seductive, and what any woman in her 40s would be attracted to, but the problem was the woman he was seducing was married, and not on the menu. Brandon was one of those predators that enjoyed the game of seducing married women and turning the husband into a cuckold. It gave him power, enhanced his ego, and free sex without any strings attached. I knew him for what he was, pure evil. Marie was in a great mood from all the drinks along with her time with Brandon, and didn't notice that I hadn't said a word since we left the bar. She was horny as hell when we got home, but I was still pissed and faked a headache, blaming it on too many drinks. I pretended to fall asleep but felt her lay next to me, using her fingers and bringing herself off from all the excitement she felt from the evening. Jake and I did go to the playoff game, though I wasn't a complete fool. Before I left the house, I strategically placed 2 voice-activated recorders, which I picked up that morning, and turned on the Find Me application on her phone while she was in the shower. Since they both knew I would be away, I was sure they would have time to either be together or discuss what had happened the previous night at the bar. To my surprise, she didn't go anywhere while I was at the game, and there were no interesting recordings on the devices I had planted. I was still suspicious and on high alert for things to come. When I got home from the game, Marie was dressed nicely and had a great dinner ready for me to enjoy. After a big kiss and a loving hug, she led me into the kitchen. "How was the game, darling? Did we win?" "Yes, Manchester won 3-1. Baby, you must be so thrilled to have seen the game with such good seats. That was so kind of Brandon." "Yes, very kind, and they were great seats." Marie seemed to be satisfied, and was smiling all evening. To my dismay, from that day forward I had constantly heard about Brandon at work, or their lunches together, how successful he was, his cottage on the lake, his travels, how nice a guy he was. I was losing my patience. Then one night she came home all excited and happy, hugged me and kissed me more than usual. Well, that was a nice greeting. What's going on? You're not going to believe it, but you know the opera, La Traviata. Yes, you talked about it for years. Why? Well, there's a performance at the Royal Opera House this Friday. Marie, you know I hate the opera. Do you really want to go? Yes, I do, but you don't have to go. That's the really good news. You see, I had lunch with Brandon today, and he told me that he had just received great tickets to this opera. Another supplier gave them to him, just like the ones he gave you for the football playoff game. When he heard how I always wanted to see this opera, he offered them to me, but was sad when I told him how much you hate the opera and wouldn't go. Then he had a great idea and offered to take me to the opera of my dreams, and then to a nice dinner. Wasn't that sweet of him, dear? Very generous. What a sweet guy, I said sarcastically and continued, but of course you turned him down. Well, no. Why would I do that? I mean, I know you don't want to go, and it's no big deal. Surely you don't mind if I go with Brandon? It is a big deal. The big deal is that you don't go on a date with another man. Whether I'm home or away, that's not what a wife does. Honestly, I'm shocked you would even consider accepting a date, I said, knowing full well this was all planned. Oh my, I didn't think of it as a date. I'm sorry, you have it all wrong. You know Brandon, and he's our friend. I mean, he gave you those wonderful tickets to the playoffs, and you had a good time. He paid for all our drinks and has been a good friend at work for me. I'm sure you understand. Smiling to myself, I decided to give enough rope to hang herself and see where this would lead. Well, yes, he did all that, and he seems like a nice chap. However, I don't feel comfortable with my wife going out with another man. I would rather you not go or do anything foolish, but you're a grown woman and can make your own decision, but you know what I want. She must have noticed my anger and discontent. Okay, darling, you don't have to worry, I understand. I didn't mean to upset you and I'll drop it right now. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. My feelings are fine, it's my wife that I'm concerned about. She came over and kissed me on the forehead. Don't worry your silly little head, I love you, and it was never going to be a date. Now stop being jealous and let's drop the subject. We dropped it, but I didn't forget it, and when she wanted sex that night, I told her I had a headache, as I was so angry and hurt from our conversation. I still wasn't sure if she had been with him sexually, but she was starting an affair with him whether she realized it or not, and I knew if I didn't put a stop to it, there could be big trouble ahead. If she already had sex with him, then we were done. This Brandon thing was becoming a much larger problem, and I told her that hearing about him all the time was making me a little jealous, and I wanted her to stop seeing him for lunch. She protested and pushed back. Charlie, I've turned down the opera tickets as you asked, but you're being foolish, and I won't stop being his friend, and if that means an occasional lunch, then you will have to be a little more understanding. Of course I was pissed, but I needed to figure out exactly what I could do about this, without adding to the rift in my marriage. Soon thereafter, in addition to lunches, it became drinks after work. When I accused her of having an affair, she swore there was nothing sexual between them, but she just enjoyed his company. So, you're not attracted to Brandon? Don't lie to me, Marie. Well, every girl at the office is attracted to him, baby, but I'm spoken for and haven't done anything. But you want to, don't you? What girl wouldn't? I mean, he's so handsome and that voice is mesmerizing. But you don't have to worry. I don't have to worry. How would you feel if I was going to lunch and after hours drinks with a girl I would love to have sex with? Something tells me you wouldn't be quite so understanding. That conversation didn't go over too well, and things between us became a little cold in our home for a few days. She was pissed at the thought of me being with another woman, and made it clear that it was not an option. Then she informed me that she would cut my balls off if I ever cheated. I thought she was delusional and not thinking straight, and had a bad feeling that our future as husband and wife was in grave jeopardy. Then it happened. One night, she came home 3 hours late without calling and leaving me worried and concerned. She walked in as if nothing was wrong, and came over to give me a kiss as if all was right with the world. To her shock, I shoved her backward and with a stare of death, let out a vile sentence that made her understand what I thought of our situation. Nice of you to finally come home. Did you duck your friend tonight? My wife had never heard me speak to her like that, and immediately apologized and explained that her phone died and got lost track of time, and would never do that again. Were you with Brandon? Marie looked down and didn't answer. I was angry and made it crystal clear that our marriage was on thin ice if this continued. Murray, let me be clear, if I find out that you already ducked him, or if you've been with him intimately in any way, we're through. I will not live with an adulteress or be lied to. That shook her, and she swore that she had remained faithful, and apologized and said she would stop. For the first time I believed that Murray finally realized the seriousness of my demands. She did stop talking about him and his greatness. But she continued to go with him for lunch and drinks, without telling me. The only thing that stopped was hearing about their time together, and how great a man he was. 2 weeks later during dinner I finally asked her if she had stopped having lunch and drinks with Brandon. She touched my arm and gave me a smile as if I was a child, trying to soothe my feelings. In a sympathetic tone she admitted that she was still seeing him, but decided not to tell me so as not to hurt my feelings. To my disbelief, she didn't realize how angry or hurt I was after hearing her confession. It's what she said next that made my head explode when she told me something that no normal man would put up with. Baby, you know I love you, and that Brandon's only a friend. The thing is, he wants to take me to his company dinner function because his date cancelled on him today. He needs a companion, and since we're such good friends I told him I would go with him, and that you would be okay with that. Shaking my head in disbelief I said, no, I'm not okay with it. So, no. You can't go with him. Damn it Murray, you're still my wife, at least for the time being. Charlie, stop being a jealous old fool. He's our friend and he needs my help. I'm going and you'll just have to trust me. I promise, you'll be okay. Old fool. Duck. This guy has rubbed off on her, and now she's calling me the old fool. Murray, if you go, I promise I won't be okay, and things between us will not be good. I can't physically stop you, but the answer is no, you can't go. Obviously, there was no sex that night or for the next week. I hardly talked to her because of my anger and frustration with this entire Brandon situation. She seemed to understand and stopped badgering me about Brandon and the date. The following day after her confession I got a call at work from Brandon. Apparently, Murray gave him my number, hoping he could convince me to change my mind. She was definitely going to get an earful when I got home later that night. Charlie, old man. How are you? Brandon, what a surprise. What can I do for you? I asked, waiting to see what the predator had in mind. Well, I called to apologize. I'm sure Murray told you that I asked her to help me out and be my companion to my company event. I realize it was a mistake to do that, and I am sorry if it caused any problems at home. Yes, it was quite shocking, and I told her how I felt. Yes, she told me of course. You see, my mistake was I should have called you first and asked for your permission, and not put Murray in that position. It should have been done man to man. I sat there stunned. The nerve of this guy was overwhelming. Listening to his confident, hypnotic voice was surreal, and made me even angrier. So, old man, let me make it up to you and set you up with whatever you like. I can arrange season tickets to Manchester, if that suits you. Brandon, are you asking me to trade my wife for some football tickets? Are you trying to turn my wife into a whore? Companionship for merchandise. Do you think that little of her? Look, I think you have misread me. I don't share my wife with anyone, and if you call me old man or old chap one more time, I swear I will rip out your tongue next time we meet. Now, I'm quite capable of buying my own tickets. Let's just put all this in the past, shall we? I must insist that you leave Marie alone, and find yourself another woman to keep you company, I said with obvious anger in my voice. It was almost like he heard nothing I said and just continued talking. Charlie, my friend, I'm sorry you feel that way because I really like Murray, and wanted to ask your permission to let her accompany me to my event, and I wanted your blessing. Please don't be angry with Murray, even though she wants to go, this is on me. So, would you reconsider her being my date for that one night? Brandon, listen closely. No. Just stop asking. She is not going to go with you and that's final. In fact, I want you to stop having lunch with her and seeing her after work for drinks. It's starting to impact our marriage, and I'm sure you can understand how I feel. Charlie, I'm sorry you feel that way, but we're just friends, and I don't intend to stop being her friend because you have some insecurities. I'm sorry you won't allow me this one favor. After all I've done for you, I gave you those amazing tickets to the football and offered season tickets, but you just don't seem to appreciate my generosity. Duck you, I already thanked you for the tickets, and like I said, I can buy my own football tickets. Now please piss off and stop interfering with my marriage, I said, slamming down the office phone. That night I went home to a very subdued Marie. Clearly, she heard about our conversation and didn't know how to act. Finally, she couldn't handle the silence anymore. I heard about your conversation with Brandon today. Did you have to be so rude? You hurt his feelings. The look I gave her after asking me if I had to be so rude could have frozen our pond in midsummer. Duck you and duck his feelings. It's interesting how you're worried about his feelings and not your husband's. And why did you give him my business phone number? Do you need to be with him that badly? Maybe I should just leave, and then you can be with your new boyfriend. She looked down and said, I was hoping you two could become better friends. You know, so we could all go out together. I'm sorry how it turned out, I never wanted anyone to be hurt. Are you mad, woman? I don't want anything to do with him, and I told him to stop taking you to lunch and drinks. In case you forgot, you're a married woman. Start acting like one or this will turn out badly, I can assure you. That pissed her off and she spoke out, stop acting like a jealous teenager. We've been married for 20 years, and nothing is going to happen. I hope you're right, I'd hate to think I've wasted my last 20 years with the wrong woman. That comment seemed to shake her, and I hoped she would come to her senses. Nothing else was said that night, and again no sex. In fact, I started sleeping in our son's room, because I was so angry at her actions and comments that I had to be alone. Marie was upset that I moved into the other room, and tried to make it up to me over the next few weeks. She said she stopped seeing Brandon for lunch and tried to become a more loving wife. Eventually, I started sleeping in our bed again, but I was still not up for sex with a woman that had obvious feelings for another man. She wasn't pleased with that and tried multiple times to get me in the mood. Deep down I knew she was still seeing Brandon, and my intuition was telling me to be vigilant if I wanted to save my marriage. Sadly, I discovered the date of Brandon's event while going through my wife's cell phone text messages. We didn't have passcodes on our phones, and I never spied on her before, so there was no need for secrecy. Reading her plans made me sad because I knew that things between us were going to change. What I learned also made my planning much easier. Not to my surprise, her last few weeks of being the loving wife was a way to win me back and help me forget about the Brandon issue. What I learned is that my conniving wife was going to spring the news on me, that she was in fact going to the event with Brandon the following Thursday night. Then I had a thought and wanted to see if she would go with him, or be faithful, knowing I forbade her to be with him. So, the next morning at breakfast I announced that I had a meeting on the 22nd in London, and would not be home until late the next evening. Knowing that Brandon's event was on the 22nd, I gave her the opportunity to either deceive me and go to the event, or come clean and tell me about her plans. Either way, I wasn't going to stick around. If she announced her plans and went to the party, I'd move out and file for a separation. If she did it without telling me, the marriage was over. Unfortunately, she remained silent and did not tell me her plans. She continued to deceive me by being loving and the perfect wife. I experienced great dinners every night, a clean home, and loving kisses when I came home from work, but no talk of Brandon or the upcoming event. On Thursday morning I kissed her goodbye for what I knew was the last time, and left for my office. With no intention of leaving for London, I would spend the night in the same hotel where the event was being held. Over that time, I did see a solicitor and arranged the paperwork to be prepared for a divorce and possible date to serve the papers. I offered twice the fee for the process server to be with me at the hotel where the event was being held, and to deliver the papers upon my approval. If she did what I thought she was going to do, we were through. Brandon's dinner engagement. I sat in the lobby wearing a modest disguise, a COVID medical mask, tinted glasses and a ball cap, as I read a paper with a perfect view of the front doors. Sure enough, at 8 p.m. Brandon came into the hotel with my lovely wife on his arm. She wore a little black dress, dark stockings, high heels, with her pert little breasts on display. Obviously she forgot to wear her bra for the occasion. They were laughing as they greeted others in a cheerful, celebratory way, as if they had been a loving couple. I fully expected them to appear, but I was not ready to see their intimate relationship in full view. Somehow, I was able to control my anger and videoed the scene with my cell phone. I would later share this with my son when I explained why his mom and I were getting a divorce. As I was watching her with Brandon, I called her phone and watched as Marie looked at her phone to see who was calling, and let the call go to voicemail. Watching her dismiss my call and turn her attention back to Brandon, felt like someone reached into my chest and pulled out my heart. All my love and my years of dedication to Marie were washed away in that one moment. I felt my eyes tearing up, but somehow, I was able to hold them back and leave several messages in a futile attempt to save what little we had left. Hi baby, it's 8 p.m. I hope you're okay because your phone went to voicemail. I love you so much, and I miss you. I was hoping she would listen to the messages, feel some guilt and leave the party before things went too far. There was still a chance if she left the party, or called me and confessed. The end of our marriage. She never even listened to the messages that night. I stayed around the dinner area and watched them from a distance. It was obvious that she was closer to him than she let on, because they behaved like a couple all through dinner. I was careful and stayed out of sight, and around 10 p.m., after several dances and some kissing, it was clear they were about to leave the dinner party. I already knew from the text that he had room at the hotel, and the 100 quid I gave the bellman got me the room number. 1246. Kim, the process server, arrived right on time at 10 p.m., and we went over my plans. I happily gave her the extra 200 quid for her help. At 11 p.m., Kim and I rode up the elevator and walked over to room 1246. Kim knocked on the door and we heard some movement as I stood to the side of the peephole. A deep voice came from inside the room. "Who is it?" Kim put her ID up the peephole and said, "Security, please open the door." He obviously didn't read the ID she displayed, but it worked, and we heard the slide come off the door. It opened just enough to see Brandon's face, and before he spoke, I moved in front of Kim and kicked the door open hard, sending Brandon staggering backwards, falling to the floor naked and in shock. There was a female gasp from inside the room as he rolled in front of Marie. Then her gasp turned into a loud scream when she saw that it was me standing there in front of her naked body. Standing there with a white fluid dripping down her legs, she was obviously freshly ducked. As Brandon remained naked on the floor, I put my foot on his neck. With my full 200 pounds on Brandon's throat, I told him not to move. I motioned to Kim, who then went over to Marie and handed her the divorce paperwork. Kim told her that she was served, and took a photo of her standing there naked with the envelope in her hands. She had a shocked expression on her face when I took off my wedding ring and threw it towards the wet spot on the bed. Marie saw my pain, and finally realized the full impact of her choices. Suddenly she wanted me, and not her boyfriend. Well, too little, too late. "Charlie, I'm sorry, I made a big mistake, and I don't want to lose you. I know this looks bad, but you know I love you, and I don't want a divorce. Please let me come home with you, and I'll explain everything and make things right again. Please, don't do this." I just shook my head in disbelief and looked at the brain-dead woman in front of me. For the first time I realized how old and out of shape she looked. Seeing her standing there naked with Brandon's cum running down her leg was revolting. After seeing all of this, any feelings I had for this woman were now gone. The love I felt for all these years was now replaced with contempt and disgust. That became the final scene of our marriage. Standing over Brandon with my foot still on his neck, I instructed Kim to leave me alone with the cheating couple. When the door closed, I looked at my wife and spoke in the voice of a desperate and angry man. "Congratulations, you've broken my heart and ended our 20 years together. And you did it in the worst possible way. You lied to me, deceived me, and then you let this piece of shit duck you. Because of that, you have ended our time together. Just sign the divorce papers and don't dare come home until Saturday afternoon. I'll need a date to get my things out of the house. You can stay in our flat until it sells, which shouldn't take too long. In the meantime, maybe you can move in with this asshole," I said, taking my boot off his throat and slamming it down on his exposed neck and balls. I slammed my heel one more time, just to make sure I connected properly. I did, and the sound of a man in terrible pain was prominent as I left the room and my wife for the last time. Epilogue. Brandon lost both testicles after being crushed into the floor. He tried to press charges, but I told Marie that if she testified for the asshole, I would tell her family about her affair and show them the photos. She made the right choice and told the police that she didn't recognize the man that caused his injuries. Brandon was pissed and felt betrayed by the woman he stole from me. After 2 months of trying to get me to speak with her, Marie reluctantly signed the divorce papers. When she finally realized there was no way to save the marriage, she told our son the full story. To her credit, she took blame for the destruction of our happy years together. We sold the flat, split our money and went our separate ways. Brandon was out of commission and wanted nothing to do with Marie, now a single woman, and told her to piss off and find herself a new man. A 46-year-old divorced woman doesn't have the pick of the litter, especially when she's carrying an additional 20 pounds, and not as desirable as she thought she was after the predator blew all that smoke up her dress. After 6 months in the gym, I lost my gut, got in good shape, and met a cute 37-year-old divorced woman with a 9-year-old daughter. Patricia had an amazing body, and she appreciated a loyal, loving man, and treated me like a king. Her daughter, Melissa, and I got along famously, and I enjoyed spoiling her. At Jonathan's graduation, Marie was now 50 years old and looked her age. She was single, alone, and unhappy with how her life turned out. I learned from Jonathan how upset she was after seeing me with my new family. Seeing how happy I was with my new pretty wife and beautiful daughter made her sad and jealous. Marie told our son how sorry she was for her actions and how poorly she treated me. She still could not forgive herself for allowing herself to be seduced by that asshole. She told Jonathan that losing my love made her understand what she gave away and how much she missed her old life. All this pain and loss because of her selfish desires. On the flip side, my life took a positive turn in less than a year after the divorce was finalized. Patricia's ex-husband cheated on her, and she knew how much pain it caused. She swore that she would never do that to me, or our happy marriage. We stayed married and faithful for the next 30 years, and enjoyed our 3 grandchildren that Melissa and Jonathan blessed us with. We never heard from Brandon after his injuries. Marie never remarried and lived the next 20 years as a lonely old woman, and never forgave herself for betraying me, her husband, and destroying her happy life. Jonathan married a wonderful girl, gave us another grandkid, and became close with my new family. I only saw Marie at Jonathan's events and her funeral. Nothing hurts more than your favorite person turning into a life lesson. And that's it for today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave. Stay vigilant, and I'll see you next time.